Do you ever wonder when is the right time to consider downsizing your home? In this video, I'm going to break down 6 things to look for when considering downsizing your home. And we're going to get into it right now. I'd love to get your comment below. What are some of the variables you're considering when downsizing your home? The first sign that most will consider when doing a downsize of their home is going to be financial. And that really begins, most financial advisors recommend that you don't spend any more than 30 to 32% of your gross income on housing. And as that gets to be more and more difficult here in the Toronto real estate market, you're going to find that by selling your home and downsizing to a less expensive home, you're going to be able to take some of that equity to partially fund your retirement, and then the balance will afford you the opportunity to buy something outright and not have to worry about having a mortgage. So things like property taxes, maintenance fees if you're purchasing a condo, heat, hydro, those are going to be your main responsibilities financially, but the mortgage itself will hopefully be eliminated. Another variable when considering downsizing will be maintenance. As time goes on, often the conversations I have when I go to meet with clients is that the house is just too big. It requires too much maintenance and they're just exhausted by it. So it's things like shoveling snow, taking care of the gardens. Those are 2 of the most common ones when I'm talking to homeowners that are considering downsizing. They look at the pros and cons, and maybe they love their gardens and they love to, take care of their property, but they'll often have conversations about condos. They like the idea of still having gardens, but on a much smaller scale, or at least they will have beautiful gardens, but they'll be maintained by a property management company, and that makes more sense for them. A third variable when considered downsizing is space. This is a great part of the conversation I have with people when they are considering a downsize. And there's a couple of things with regard to space. The first one, what people find is maybe their children have moved out of the house and they're starting to realize that they just don't need the space they once did. They're hopeful the kids aren't moving back because there's always that period of time, your kids maybe go off to university or college, and those first couple of years after school, they might need to come home and live with their parents just to get themselves up on their own feet, to establish themselves. But oftentimes I'll get a request from clients that they want to get a 2-bedroom bungalow. That way there's not enough room for all the kids to move home, but they do want another house. They just want it on a smaller scale. So that's a very popular option that I find people take. The other part is sometimes with all the rooms in a large family home, they find that they're just cleaning everything so much and the rooms aren't being used. They've realized that their lives have become much simpler and they want to be more practical. So that's why they'll want to choose a smaller space, because it's just, for practical reasons, easier to maintain, and it's a much simpler lifestyle. I would say the other part when it comes to considering too much space or the overall space is stairs. As people age, I find that they're less willing to do stairs. So often the request or the conversation really is they love their current home, they love the community, but they're tired of doing the stairs. Their knees are getting too sore. It's just too much to go up and down. So that's when they really want to consider bungalows and condominiums. But stairs is one of the critical things to consider as you're starting to look forward and determining if downsizing is right for you. The fourth consideration that I find is hugely important to clients when I'm meeting with them when they are discussing the potential of downsizing, and it's usually in advance of their retirement, is lifestyle. People often decide whether or not they want to live, let's say, in a smaller house, whether they're going to move to the suburbs, or whether it's even going to be a condominium. And the reason I find condominiums, as an example, are heavily favored are when people really decide that they want to travel a lot. They're maybe going to go away for the entire winter. They feel it's just simpler to, if you have a condo, you just have to lock the door and you don't even have to consider it. There's nothing really to maintain. Now, for 99.9% of the time, that's true. The one caveat I would say when it comes to condo living is always check with your insurance broker, because if there were to be a flood, a pipe burst, you still have to make sure somebody is checking in on that property. So don't assume that just because you're in a condo, you can lock the door and go away. Really check with the insurance broker to determine what your policy says in terms of how long you can be away without somebody checking on it. And then maybe you're going to have a family member or a friend or a neighbor just monitor the condo for your safekeeping. The fifth variable I would like to discuss when it comes to downsizing is health. And this one's come up for me with a lot of clients as they get on in years. And I recently had a situation, clients in their 80s. One of them was diabetic, was requiring dialysis on a weekly basis, and it really became overwhelming for them in their current home. So we didn't have a great length of time to plan, but we were able to get them assisted living in a wonderful facility in the west side of Toronto, which really worked out well for them. Great environment, they were well looked after, but everything had to happen really fast. So they were fortunately in the position where we could get them into the new assisted living arrangement, which then allowed me to stage and list their property. We got the condominium sold very quickly, and that allowed them to move on to the next phase of their life. But it's something that I think people should consider, because you want to have a plan. And the longer you have to plan your situations out, the better off you'll do and the less overwhelming the situation will become. A major life change is the sixth variable that one might consider when downsizing. From my experience, I can think of situations where someone has passed away and the loved one that's left remaining really doesn't want to stay in the house anymore. And this is a big decision for them because it's very sentimental. But I've had situations where it might be the wife or the husband, doesn't matter which one, they just don't feel comfortable staying in the home without their spouse. So they just decide they want a fresh start. Let's just sell the home, and then they're going to downsize, probably from the physical side of the home being smaller. It'll be easier to maintain, less burden on them, and the financial wherewithal piece of it. Now their income could change because now they're only living on one income, or if they're already retired, there's maybe a reduced pension benefit. So these are all variables that people have to consider, but that's a major life change I find that will prompt a lot of people to downsize their home. I hope you found value in this video about some of the variables in downsizing your home, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.